A very warm welcome to this very interesting panel discussion. The topic of the panel today is logistics and smart mobility, innovating for demand shapeshifts. Now, before I introduce you to the panelists, let me just give you a little bit of an introduction on what the panel really is. Now, when the pandemic first struck India in 2020, it created a complex variety of problems for logistics and mobility companies in India. Now, the nationwide lockdown meant location and tracing becomes important for fleet as well as warehouse operations until restrictions were lifted. And when demand returned in late July, there were pent-up fulfillment needs and fresh demand from new quarters, even new businesses to grow. Now, a panel of business leaders today will discuss how technology proved to be a real-time lever in keeping the wheels moving for the logistics and mobility industry in this fast-changing world. And on this panel, we have Vaibhav Khandelwal, who's the CTO and co-founder at Shadowfax Technologies. We have Nitesh Shinde, who's the Vice President of Product Management at Porter.in. We have Himanshu Gupta, who's the CTO and co-founder at Shipsy. Marcus Sharon, who's the Vice President of Engineering at Zoomcar. Varun Agni, the CTO of Bounce. And Nitesh Agarwal, who's the Head of Customer Engineering at Google Cloud India. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this panel. I want to begin by asking all of you this very important question in terms of what challenges did the industry really face amid this pandemic? And, specifically in the first wave of the lockdown, we've seen a lot of impact as far as fleets are concerned, a lot of disruption out there. How did you deal with these kind of business challenges? And I want to begin with you, Vaibhav, if you could give us some context as to how the space played out for you.
Thanks, Priya. I think the entire pandemic scenario, and I sincerely hope that this is probably the endemic of the pandemic, but the entire scenario, it played out as more of a firefighting zone. Things started with, there were a lot of challenges per se. One needs to maintain the safeguard yourself, your employees, your delivery partners. At the same time, also think about the end customers as well. So initial phase of time, challenges were across the lack of certainty on what is allowed and what is not, and what is allowed in what areas at from what time is it allowed. So a lot of challenges were because of these uncertainties. We had to build in a couple of solutions which allowed our delivery partners to have a safe pass, so that they count as essential services and they can locomote throughout the city. At the same time, once things started growing in, it was also important for us to ensure that all our customers are also safe and secure. So it was prerogative for us to ensure that our delivery partners, they are properly sanitized, they are following the right COVID protocols, and in case of any contingency, we are able to contact trace it to the delivery partner and all to the customers that were involved in there. So a lot of challenges worked in that direction. From a business point of view, the scenarios was how do you best manage your load from one category to the other. So as we all knew in the initial part of it, the e-commerce business was told to be shut off in order to restrict the circulation of COVID. And as a result of it, a wide majority of our business, we had to transform those resources, those delivery partners, into delivering grocery, into delivering pharmacy. And then once the lockdown opened up, there was a humongous pent-up demand that was there. There were lots and lots of people willing to get stuff to their home delivered. And there was a good sense of confidence among people that e-commerce is a good way forward for them. So as a result of it, when we opened up the e-commerce segment, the demand in e-commerce shot up significantly. So once we had to divert our resources from one category to another, and then at that other point of time, as soon as the e-commerce opened up, the demand in that category just tripled in that direction there. So managing those dynamic scenarios, managing those runtime decisions was an important challenge which the team was able to take good care of.
Right. I also want to bring in both Nitesh Shinde as well as Himanshu onto this discussion in terms of how did you manage the challenges last year, and what, according to you, were the major pain points that you all saw? Nitesh, if I could begin with you.
Yeah, sure. So I think, like Vaibhav said, I think one of the, prime thing that that even Porter as a company faced is kind of a demand shaping, right? The shaping of the demand shaping completely moved up in the favor of essentials, primarily medical equipments, medical inventories, and the groceries basically, right? And a lot of things. Even I think the regulations often kept changing. That was one, like, which meant that a lot of our products had to continuously change to kind of meet those changing regulations, probably sometimes every day, sometimes every week, right? And I think those were some of the key challenges. Specifically for Porter, I think one of the challenges that we also dealt with is, we brainstorm and find out, like, how can we be more relevant for our customers, right? In this pandemic era. And that point of time, we were operating a lot more on the larger vehicle categories, which is basically mini trucks and above. And then we decided to start two-wheeler, three-wheeler, like the shorter, vehicle segments, basically, because we figured out that there will be a lot more demand for actually porting a lot of small stuffs up to 20 kg, like 1 to 20 kg kind of stuff. And that's something that can be done on a two-wheeler much better than mini trucks. And operations wise, it was a lot more challenging for us to kind of keep operating the mini trucks at the supply level, and the demand was kind of changing every day, right? So I think that's a major overall we did in terms of our product offerings. And I think we had to roll out product changes like faster than we could ever think of. I think that's one challenge that we definitely dealt with. And I think talking about the pent up demand, that's also, I think, pretty similar to probably what Vaibhav described. But the way it happened for us is like there's already a resource commitment for essentials, but then on top of it, we had to, like, very rapidly onboard a lot of new delivery partners to kind of serve that pent up demand, and which is what we did. Probably third part I want to talk about is, we do operate a call center support systems, and that had to go through a major transformation because nobody could operate from office, and we had to convert an in-office call center into work from home call center in that sense, and probably start using some of technologies like chatbots, voice bots, and all to eventually solve for the scale up of the volumes. Yeah.
Right, Himanshu, would you like to come in out there?
Yeah, sure. One of the unprecedented aspects of the pandemic was that it caught not just businesses like us off guard, but enterprises across the industries, because it was a major change. And but being a digital company, being a software provider, SaaS software provider, it was not much challenging for us to absorb the disruptions that were caused by the lockdown. So basically, earlier, what most of our customer base was for express couriers. But as the lockdown began, the courier or e-commerce were restricted due to the lockdown. But only the essentials deliveries were allowed. So what we saw was that there was an increase in, as Vaibhav was also mentioned and Nitesh mentioned, there was an increase in delivery of essential grocery ho gaya. There was an increase in delivery of grocery, medicines, these kind of things. And for our existing customers also, they needed technology so that they can try out these new business models where they can, instead of just delivering parcels, they can deliver these grocery or food or medicines in a on-demand manner. And what our platform did was, what our team did was, we quickly changed our technology, we quickly evolved our platform to ensure that our customers are able to handle these new type of use cases. For example, earlier, before the pandemic, around 90% of our transactions through our system were for express couriers. But during the pandemic and after the pandemic, this ratio changed to 50-50. 50% are courier, and now 50% of them are on-demand essentials, grocery, medicine, these kind of things.
Right. I want to bring in both the fleet operators, Varun as well as Marcus here on this conversation to ask you a little bit about how mobility faced challenges, considering that both of you are operating fleets for end customers out there. So Varun, if I can begin with you, and then I'll come to you, Marcus.
Mobility was the first one to get hit right off the door. as soon as people stopped moving, which was necessary for us to get this pandemic under control, we really saw an overnight dip in demand. And when the lockdown was announced, there was a steep cliff. And what we also were experiencing was challenges around bringing this fleet home, because we knew that this lockdown would not be a week or two's affair, but a bit longer to really make sure that the country is prepared well to handle this pandemic and really doesn't let this thing go out of hand. So we really were trying to get to grasp the situation, and also trying to find ways for our delivery executives and the on-ground executives to bring these bikes to a place where we can store them for a longer term, and the kind of permissions that needed, the logistics that was required to bring these bikes out of the streets. All of those things were like, the first few days of lockdown kind of went into ideating and executing this mass migration of bikes. Post that, we immediately started to work on the new demand that would shape up post the lockdown. We knew that the dockless business that we had, where we were counting on a lot of these, the office goers, the students, who really were the crux of our demand, were not going to be, it's not going to stay the same for us for a little while longer. So we started thinking about various other business opportunities that we needed to adapt our business to. For example, longer term rentals, where people could keep the bikes with them for months together and have that as a mobility option for themselves. That was a new product that we started developing. We also took the opportunity to go over to the electric side of the business, which was giving us very good returns before lockdown, and we really doubled down our investment on that EV business and really started building products to bolster that and make the operation streamlined towards that. So we really, the 4 odd weeks of the first lockdown, and then again the second lockdown of another 4 odd weeks, we really took that opportunity to make sure that we changed our products to counter the reality of the situation, and then be at a position where we could take we could continue business in a different manner when the lockdown did open up.
Right, Markesh, I'd like to come to you at this point in time to understand what were the main pain points that you really faced.
Thanks, Priya, for having us here. And I think the first major, I like our Varun was highlighting, right? The mobility was the first affected sector, and we were also like badly hit in terms of business, and the whole business tanked to, let's say, 5% of our demand. So it forced us to rethink on what next, right? So, and one more major issue what we faced at Zoomcar definitely was tracking our assets. We had a free float model where a user were able to park the vehicle anywhere. So with the let's say with the vehicle not being booked for some time, obviously the batteries and stuff died down on the devices, IoT sensors, everything started failing. So we were in a position to track down the vehicles physically, like our fleet has to go get into the roads and track the vehicles. So we did that as well, right? So moving forward, I think within a couple of weeks, we also realized there is the change in demand, or the change in demand pattern, or the new use cases that surfaced. We looked at something like a short-term subscriptions. We were having a subscriptions which were long-term earlier. So you would be able to subscribe a car earlier for 3 months or 6 months. We really shortened it to 15 days or a 30-day subscription, so that people in the pandemic, especially when they don't want to travel with some co-passengers or let's say Ola or Uber, so they started preferring individual vehicles or vehicles for their own use. So I think short-term subscriptions became a good hit, and we had a decent turnaround there. And we also started partnering with other travel vendors, like let's say MakeMetrip was one of our partners. So we started powering mobility through them, right? We provided, it was a pure tech effort from our side to maximize our distribution channel. And we also started thinking in terms of other business avenues. I think one way pandemic gave Zoomcar a jolt, and we all went into multiple business streams, which helped us in evolving, let's say, platform as a service. Right? We moved out completely. We are trying to move into a hybrid model where we will be less asset heavy, or we tend to get into a platform as a service, trying to be more of a tech player, trying to power other OEMs, trying to power other fleet owners. So we are trying to position more of a tech company rather than let's say, a car rental or a mobility company. So we are a mobility tech provider, tech platform provider. So we are more of a PaaS today. So that has helped us actually to evolve as a more mature business model, even in terms of tech product as well. So that now we are in phase, almost we are launching it in 4 or 5 countries outside. So like we are beta, so we should be shortly launching, and maybe a press will be covering it. So we should be. That's where we are.
Right, Nitesh, let me bring you in at this point in time to understand the tech perspective from the Google perspective on the tech front. What kind of technologies are available to sort of monitor this kind of fleet management and other options that are available?
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for having me here, and hello to all the panelists and the viewers. I think if I look at Google in our own mission statement, the first lines are we want to give access to the world's information. And a lot of that world's information sits, obviously, the way deliveries happen, the way route optimization happens, the way fleets are managed, and so on. So in our mind, data and analytics becomes therefore center screen, when it comes to anything to do with fleets, travel, the entire industry around logistics, aggregators, and so on and so forth, as well as all those providing solutions to that, right? Whether it's Shadowfax or, as Markesh said, whether it's Zoomcar trying to, reorient itself as a, technology player as well there. So we are there over there. The other part is to really provide the best, allow technology in terms of ML, really to be able to, do route management, do route optimization, do things around vision AI. How do you do natural language processing? How do you, take care of your shipment visibility? How do you take care of last mile deliveries? How do you take care of the entire fleet management that you may have? And there's a lot of work around operations research that we've done around this space. So there's incredible opportunities, a number of global examples around that, as well as examples in India. Obviously, the ecosystem uses Google Maps almost like a de facto standard out there for real-time data with very, very user-friendly interfaces, as all of us know. The others, if you look at another part of Google, which is Waze, where really nobody knows what's happening in your city better than the people who live there, right? So Waze really exchanges publicly available incidents, and it really gives you the data, enables our public sector partners to respond more immediately to accidents, analyze congestion reports, and so on, right? So we triangulate this data, and of course, back in North America, Waymo is very, very popular when it comes to, really the mission is to make safe and easy travel, in an autonomous way. However, all of this can't be done if we fundamentally don't know where things are. And that's essentially where the whole Google geospatial data, portfolio starts working. The other part is how do you understand options of how to, really do things? And that's where Google's search capabilities start coming in. How do you then analyze at scale if you're a big logistics and aggregator provider? That's where our Looker and BigQuery capabilities start coming in. The other interesting part that I heard, with all the speakers was collaborating in real time. And that's where our whole workspace portfolio starts coming in. How do you start collaborating in an innovative way, right? How do you do this flexibly? And one of the most interesting things that I want to leave behind as I summarize this is the ecosystem. So one of the things that Google has driven is the GTFS standard, which is the General Transit Fleet Specification Standard, where as an agency, you need multiple stakeholders to leverage your data. So how do you do this in an open ecosystem way? So essentially, if I can summarize this, there is the whole area of planning and analytics. There's the whole area of last mile deliveries. There's the whole area of customer experience in terms of really being able to track your shipments in a voice-enabled way. How do you then do payments using Google Pay? The whole digital supply chain part. And if you are an aggregator, how do you do warehouse optimization? And eventually, how do you get your employees and your fleet to be productive and therefore look at workforce transformation? So all of these are areas that really Google can help you with. And of course, it's all powered by Google Cloud. So it's an interesting way to bring all of this data together too.
Thanks for that, Nitesh. I want to bring in both Vaibhav as well as Nitesh into this conversation to ask you, what does it really take to develop products that are suited to market conditions? Because, amidst this pandemic, we've seen everybody develop products, and some of you did allude to it earlier, saying that you did develop products in a very short period of time. So what does it really take to develop such products to be able to cater to the masses? So Vaibhav, if you can begin with how you did it at Shadowfax.
Sure. So I completely agree. I mean, like everyone else, the development cycle was decently short. There were certain bets that we had to take. So in a regular product development cycle, you would try to capture in the right data, try to understand the voice of the customers in a much more deeper manner, and then take a calculated call. Given the way scenarios were evolving in the pandemic situation, and even in the second wave as well, when there was acute oxygen shortage as well, the number of solutions that we had to come up were they were based on the gut feeling of the product manager who is driving that piece. We also took help for number of solutions, number of tools, which could fast track the MVP process, so that we can test out and solve the problem statement in a quicker manner. One of the solution, for example, that we came up during the first wave was how do we identify that our fleet is wearing mask, is wearing our t-shirt, is carrying a sanitizer or not. So what we did was that at any point of time, if you log in into our app, you would be asked to click a selfie, and basis that selfie we trained a machine learning model which could identify whether a mask is detected or not, whether the t-shirt of Shadowfax is worn by the rider or not. The t-shirt is important because your police authorities, your people who are guarding the lockdown, they only allow if you have certain sense of identification to travel. So this was one of the things that we had to quickly work it out. Then in the second wave, as I mentioned, to assist certain startups who were getting in oxygen cylinders or oxygen concentrators from either importing it or getting it from different states, we had to develop certain solutions on how our existing facilities can be used, how our routing can be done, so that we deliver these cylinders and concentrators to the respective hospitals, to the respective end users and patients who need them in a much dire manner. These were some of the things that we worked on. There were a number of other solutions that we designed in from a client perspective. Maybe I'll just take a minute to spend on that as well. So one of the things that we realized was that with the pandemic coming in, brands did not brands. So earlier brands used to focus that there is a warehouse, and from this warehouse we will deliver shipments to the end customer. With pandemic coming in and all their offline stores, they had inventory, and there was no way that this inventory could actually be delivered or can be used for the offline visitors. So they started thinking that if we can create an omni-channel sort of a strategy, wherein depending on the customer location, we can identify whether to pick the shipment or fulfill the shipment from the warehouse or fulfill it from the store itself, such that the speed and the cost, all these things are optimized. So this was another solution that we launched at that point of time.
Right, Nitesh,
Yeah.
would you like to come in out here?
Yeah, sure. So I think for Porter, like we specialize in intracity logistics primarily, right? And I think for us, and to be honest, like we have done 12 plus product launches, like major product launches in last 15 months or so, like since the pandemic like kind of started. And like they constitute now 60-70% of our revenue, and we are at 5x scale of what we were pre-pandemic. I mean, basically in that sense, right? So all this growth, I think we were able to achieve based on, I think, greater adoption of some of the technology in product development itself, right? And the second part of it is doing more iterative development, I would say, right? So some of our products literally started as Google Forms and Google Worksheets to start with, right? To just get the operations going, and then eventually you keep building better and better. You keep iterating on it and keep building a better and better product, right? I think that's where a lot of focus went in terms of not trying to think. I think for 0 to 1. for example cases, you really need to probably iterate fast, learn more about the market as quickly as you can by launching something quickly, figure out the insights, figure out the bottlenecks, and then keep iterating on it. I think that's what for Porter has worked. Of course, we use Google Workspace also for internal collaborations, brainstorming, meetings, huddles, everything, right? So I think those things, very tight integration of the team in terms of cross-functional teams, I think is a very important factor in the long run, because there's like a lot of like I say, I think great products are combination of great science, business, or commerce, and great art, right? They are, at the end of the great product have all three check boxes in that sense. So I think at Porter we really believe that if we can iterate fast, like we can start with something which probably is not pretty initially, but then eventually we can convert it into a great product, right? I think we start with that, solve the core problem, and then keep solving the layers of onion in that sense, right? So I think that's what has helped Porter to really solve some of the use cases that pandemic threw us at in terms of opportunities also in that sense, right? That there was like a lot of demand for certain services. We launched, I think, 12 plus cities remotely, and I think that's also on the backing of technology itself, right? So earlier operations were a lot more hands-on, and then we had to figure out ways of doing a lot of these things like how can we train our driver partners remotely, right, through automated trainings and so on and so forth. So I think sometimes we also forget a lot of our internal customers when we are growing the company and overall product offerings. Some of our building solutions for some of our internal product users basically, right? I think, or I would say sales or support teams, which makes their lives a lot more easier. That also is long term, I think, pays off as a big dividend. I think it's pretty interesting sometimes. I mean, if you heard on the mobility side, one Bounce tried longer subscription and Zoomcar tried shorter subscription. So often what your market demands, you may have some insights to it, but sometimes you really need to iterate and find out what really your market wants, I think. So that's what I would summarize that. Probably to summarize it, I would say that you should iterate fast and build up on insights.
Right, Himanshu, I want to bring in both you and Mitesh at this point in time to understand the importance of cloud in your business, and begin with you, Himanshu, to understand how you've implemented cloud to bring about better workflow at your business, and then I'll come to you, Mitesh, to understand how it's used overall by logistics companies and how the power of cloud can be leveraged out there. Himanshu?
We have been using, our complete platform is on cloud, and being on cloud has helped us in a lot of ways. First and foremost is about creating a scalable product where we have been growing at a rate of 80 to 100% year on year, and to handle that scale, to handle this growth, we have created our cloud infrastructure in such a way that it auto scales with demand. We have been using a lot of new technologies like serverless. You have cloud functions. In Google Cloud, we have cloud, and we have been using that. Also, we have been using a lot of our platform is AI enabled, and we have been using a lot of AI APIs of Google Cloud. We have been using Vision API for OCR. We have been using this for natural language processing. We have been using OR tools and similar kind of technologies to manage to create a good task allocation and route optimization strategy. Also, because our customers trust us with their data, we have been using a lot of tools for security, data security, right? So overall, I would say that being on cloud help us to evolve faster, to handle scale and iterate our product at a rapid pace, so that our product team and engineering team focus on developing use cases, solving business problems of our customers, and the maintenance and the other aspects of administration is left to our cloud providers.
Right, Mitesh, let me come to you to understand how logistics companies can leverage the power of cloud out there to basically manage overall workflow as well as data.
Yeah, absolutely. And some great points there by Himanshu, right? I think the combination of Google Maps and cloud, right, is always a combination that works better together. Because if I look at whether you're a logistics company, an aggregator, someone who runs warehouses, or you actually, do intercity, transportation and logistics, there are three parts that matter at the end of the day. There is the whole driver experience, which I think was alluded to earlier as well, or someone who's actually doing the navigation. The second is, what's the consumer experience that at the end of the day you're delivering, right? So how are you doing shipment tracking, address validation? If you're doing hyperlocal stuff like what Porter does, what about drop-off selection points, right? And the third part is the whole fleet optimization. And all of this needs significant amount of backend services and data. So whether you're using core Google Map APIs, or you're using route preferred APIs, or you have your own fleet routing APIs, either you've developed them grounds up or you're using Google Cloud routing APIs, right? There's the fundamental of all of this is that there's a lot of data being generated. So whether you use applications across order tracking, fleet monitoring, or you're using this, data to generate insights and to guide your operations in real time, really, especially during the pandemic, the number of changes that have happened, right? Like, for example, routes would get blocked. So if you were I live in Bangalore, for example, suddenly they would, block off, if many of us remember, that they would block off an area. Now, how do you get to a particular area or a pin code? The whole digitization of logistics planning through machine learning can really, really help, with some of these unforeseen circumstances that may come. Also, there's a lot of, mishaps that happen during the delivery of goods. You can go to the wrong address and so on and so forth. So how does your system learn more and more from some of this? So very clearly, the logistics industry has a lot of complicated steps, right? Planning and scheduling, working with more accuracy and efficiency, then streamlining the whole process efficiently. Now, all of this means that, you need to have the ability to process data very fast, the ability to scale up and down, as Himanshu mentioned, in real time, and also be able to, generate insights in real time so that your end customer experience and your driver experience is great. At the same time, you're able to, fleet track and fleet optimize really well. Two global examples where we've really done this very, very well are UPS, for example, in the US, or Gojek, for example, in Southeast Asia. A number of customers in India that, really use the power of analytics on the cloud. So Google Cloud's BigQuery capability really allows us to do this really fast. For example, at UPS, we use almost 1 billion data points per day. And those include things like package weight, shape and size, facility capacity across their network, and so on and so forth. So this really minimizes, the forecasting uncertainty that is there. And you think about this, the combination of, like, for example, the holiday season that's coming up now, and with all the uncertainties of the pandemic, what is open, not open, the combination of maps, cloud, and data, I think, is a very, very potent combination that everybody can use.
Right. I want to get Varun and Markesh into the conversation to ask you about how basically data can be used to localize, to build a localized service model, because we've seen data models evolve over time, and to create a localized model out there does require a lot of tailoring on the data front. So I could begin with you, Markesh, and then go to Varun on this.
Sure. I think me and Varun would have gone through a similar stuff, right? For us, rebalancing is one of the major things, especially in terms of inventory, right? And for that, let's say we have a lot of data models which we keep optimizing, or we keep trying out. It is not that there is a hard and fast rule. And we have been evolving that model. And with the pandemic, with the inventory become limited, right? With you getting into permanent blocks, or let's say with absence of service centers, or even the inventory going down. So obviously that forced us to rethink on rebalancing, rethink on strategy on rebalancing, especially around key areas where the blockouts are not there, or where the real demand is there. So basically, I think we have done that well with let's say we evolved into more of a free float model with let's say you try to take more like an Uber or Ola rather than taking into a hubs. We were more of hub solution earlier. Like once the pandemic came in, when we wanted to really optimize for the localization, so we got into more of a free float model where you pick a pick a car and drop it the way. Because in a pandemic, I don't expect someone to really go into a hub, or that last mile connect is always missing. So I think we, as a product, also we evolved very, very quickly into that, right? Like everyone was mentioning, right? There was more of an agility from the team, and it was completely a firefight mode, right? It depends on what is the feedback I'm going to get on a daily basis from my ground ops. If my ground ops says, Mark, can we do this today? Can we fix this today? Can we get the new feature? It starts with, at times it started with Google Forms, or we did try Airtable a bit, but yeah, there were a lot of let's say firefight. It was completely a firefighting mode, right, for 2-3 months, or even a little more, till the lockdowns eased on the first phase. I think the second phase was even more worse hit, right? It was completely lockdown, but I think the team were much used to that phase. The second lockdown, the second phase was much. People were okay to handle it. It was more on the panic side, on the health side, rather than the product or tech. People were more worried about team's health. There were a lot of news around someone of the family or the extended family would have been affected. So it was more of a moral, let's say, support rather than the panic on the product or business. So I think the second phase was much easier to handle, but initially the whole team went through the overall, let's say, starting from the simple product to my data engineering, data science thing. There was I would say credit to the entire team, but yeah, definitely it was a firefight mode where we need to evolve on a daily basis. Even because we used to have a stand up in the morning, then evening the whole thing would have gone for a task. Then we'd say, okay, let us do this instead of that. So it was completely. I would not say even we were on a weekly plan, weekly sprint. It was like a daily story. Like we tried to. It was a pure startup mode, I would say.
Right, Varun?
Yeah, so as soon as we started opening up business, we wanted to use data for two reasons. One is visualization and optimization. Well, a couple of use cases that I can remember off the top of my head were the demand patterns were significantly different from what we were used to pre-COVID. So what we did was we collected a lot of data points around how and where our new users are using Bounce. And we started plotting them out on the map and decided, where should we operate now? Where should we focus more on distribution of our bikes? And the kind of data that we had collected over the last few years of operation was no longer valid, and we had to collect new set of data, plot them on the map, visualize that, and then take decisions to optimize our distribution of bikes. And then when we were doing that, we had built an in-house platform called Atlas, which was based on a Google Map and few open source admin platforms. And we used that to actually help out people to find hospital beds and availability of it. So we started collecting the data from public sources, BBMP, and started plotting out these these hospitals on the map, where people could just see what the real-time status of the beds were, what the real-time status of oxygen availability of these in these hospitals were, and then go and check in. And then we also had contact details for it. And then after that, on top of that, we built another platform where people could check out where vaccines were available, and also for what vaccine they were individually looking for, whether it be Covaxin or Covishield, and then what the slots were, and then they would just again be redirected to CoWIN app for booking those appointments. And then for optimization, what we really which was a bigger task at hand, was when we started back operation, we were predominantly EV. And for EV, a big concern is range anxiety. I mean, and plus even our bikes, which were usually doing about 120, 130 kilometers before refueling, were now reduced to 50 kilometers, because that's really the range of a 2 kilowatt hour battery pack would be. And for us, the optimization strategy that we had to look for was placing the battery swapping stations across the city, which would benefit us and the consumers to get the bike with the longest range, and give us the opportunity to change the batteries at a lowest cost. So we started putting together the distribution of our bikes, the demand areas, where would we be most benefited by putting a battery swapping station at, and then we went around doing the redistribution of the batteries as well into those stations, and having the agents pick up those batteries and swap it out on the bike. And this network has given us a lot of learnings. One is where would people move around, and where would they find the right time to swap the batteries out. So it's kind of building out the gas station network that we probably did on a fairly intuitive basis, but now with a more data-led approach, where we kind of understand what the demand patterns look like before we start putting up these battery stations in the city. And we want to expand these learnings to other cities as well, and also use and open it up to much larger use case where people can buy bikes and then swap the batteries out from with our network.
Right. I want to get some closing comments from all of you to understand what the future lies in terms of new technologies and new implementations that could happen in business. So if each of you could just give me one very important point in terms of what kind of new emerging technologies, implementation of AI and ML could mean in your business going forward. Vaibhav, I'll begin with you.
I think the most important thing for us driving from the AI ML perspective is how do we optimize the route and how do we ensure the safety of our delivery partners. So as I mentioned about the mass detection piece that we had worked on, we had built similar solutions around our routing piece wherein we try to understand what are the customer preferences. So given, so just from a statistics perspective, we touch base 35% of our customers twice in a month itself. So that allows us to capture the underlying data. What are the time at which I should attempt the order? What are the time that it will take me at the society doorstep? What is a preferred route? Can I create a sense of predictability in terms of the rider delivery partner going in at that point of time? So we merge the route optimization problem with the learnings that we get from the customer data pattern and order pattern there, and in order to create a customer delight in that direction. So yeah, I would like just want to highlight these 2 points for
Himanshu?
Yeah. So one of the things, as Vaibhav mentioned, will be on optimal task allocation and route optimization, where because currently operational efficiency and cutting down the cost is one of the major differentiator for businesses, and using technology, using AI and ML, if they can optimize their cost, they can let me give you an example. For example, earlier there were what customers were demanding were same day delivery or the next day delivery, but currently after the pandemic, after the pandemic, there has been an increase in demand for on-demand delivery, where someone can deliver orders in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And to handle this kind of situation and to handle good customer, to give a good customer experience, this efficiency of operation through smarter allocation of tasks, smarter route optimization is really necessary, and this is what will drive the businesses. What will make them profitable.
Right, Nitesh, very quickly.
Yeah, I think from Porter's perspective, I think like Mitesh said, using multiple data points to really build predictive analytics models for for doing better demand supply match, right? So if you lose demand, it's opportunity loss. If you have oversupply, it's basically negative experience and lower efficiencies for the overall logistics business. So which means I think like investing in a lot more data analytics solutions and using a lot of big data, I think that will be really key. The second part of it, it's probably related to using the technologies like in the space of this whole support and assistance and training, right? So how do we train some of our new segments, right, for tier 2, tier 3 cities, the Bharat as we call it. I think we really need to invest in a lot of vernacular content and a lot of natural language processing in that sector.
Right. Interesting. Makish, very quickly.
See, we are our main focus on this with the AI and ML is around the driver score, which is we are working on. Basically, that is something which we have evolved over the period. Driver score gives you give a score on a base in a range of 100 how a driver actually drives and how the vehicle is being used based on a lot of IoT parameters, and it starts from your speed and it goes up to your how you apply clutches, how you handle brakes, everything. So we have come out with that, and we are evolving this, and we are, I think it has a couple of applications. One is definitely giving a direct PM to my user to educate him to drive well or help him to drive well, or giving him a score on how he drives. And the other side of it is our direct business application, where many insurance companies are very keen on this data and OEMs are keen on this data. and we are trying to work out a business model where we can work in hands with the other partners. And there is also, let's say, the driver scoring is something which evolves over the time. And since we have got a 7 year of data which has been collected over the years, I think we have a robust model which we are able to, and the focus is to build more robust data around this and models around it and make it more interesting for the partners
Right.
and make it, yeah.
Right. Varun, very quickly, final word from you.
Yeah, sure. Decision science is in Bounce. We kind of use it for reliability, which means that the location accuracy of the vehicle, the quality of the vehicle based on feedback from users, from predictions based on previous behaviors of the bike, and also the demand, of course, the demand supply platform, which will be very useful for redistribution, pricing, and also operations optimization. And then there is also a large amount of work that goes into, again, optimizing the battery swapping routes, network, and also the predictive maintenance on the vehicles as well.
Right. Let me come to you, Mitesh, for a final comment on what this really means in terms of implementation, what the future of integration with AI/ML means for the logistics industry.
Thank you, Priya. And first of all, big thank you to all the panelists. Some great insights there. I want to add three, big points, especially around the usage of technology. You mentioned AI, ML, data as a big thing. I think if I really look at the part that I'd love to add to all of this is the whole culture, talent, and training part. So I think every organization here needs to imbibe, the culture of being data first. And I can clearly see all of you driving that. And the whole area around talent, because as we've all seen in the last few months, there's no dearth of liquidity coming into the market in terms of funding, but therefore talent is rare. So especially it's very, very important that you invest out there around how your employees are going to handle all the new technologies and frameworks. And one good way is certification, and Google can really help you there. And the final part is obviously around the tech itself, the tools and technologies itself. And clearly, if I had to summarize it, if I looked at planning and analytics, whether it's with vehicle tracking and ETA, whether it's with predictive maintenance, as Varun just mentioned, or with organization-wide data repositories, I think that it's the whole area around planning and analytics. The second area is around last mile deliveries. So how do you really do the assignment of drivers or any of the vehicles that you use? How do you do document understanding, and how do you do demand forecasting? How do you do route optimization? How do you pick the right delivery routes? And with the prices of fuel being where they are, right? Clearly, any savings there is going to be really, really useful. So the combination of Maps, Waze, and Google AI can really help you there. The other part is the whole digital supply chain part. How can you really start doing natural language processing using Vision API? How do you start using Google Sheets, Google Forms for employee productivity to get shipment visibility for your customers? How do you do guided operations? And if you really look at it, the whole application part around how do you bring in scale and modernization to your applications, right? That's where cloud can help you. The whole data part can help you. So very clearly, whether it's warehouse optimization, digital supply chains, the customer experience part, last mile deliveries part, planning and analytics part, or the culture training part, I think Google's there to support all of you, and we'll be very, very pleased to partner with everybody. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, panelists, for being a part of this very interesting discussion. Thank you so much for your time.